Have you ever stopped and wondered why it's one mouse but two mice? But then one house is two houses? English plurals can feel kind of like a puzzle. Well, today, we're going to solve it together. We're going to uncover all the hidden rules and, yeah, the weird rule breakers that shape the words we use every single day.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. It's super simple. A noun is singular when there's just one of something, and it's plural when there's more than one. That's it. This one idea is the key to, well, everything else we're about to talk about.
So here's the big question. How do we actually make that leap from singular to plural? I mean, if you've got one apple, but you want to talk about a whole bunch of them, what do? Answering this one simple question is going to show us the blueprint for almost all English plurals.
And luckily for all of us, for most English nouns, the answer is incredibly easy. This is the default setting, the main rule, and it's the one you're going to use 90% of the time.
And here it is, the just add s rule in action. So apple becomes apples, dog becomes dogs. It's a straightforward little trick that works for the huge majority of nouns. Really, this is the backbone of the whole system.
See? Right here, we don't just see one apple. We see a whole lot of apples. That little s at the end does all the heavy lifting. It's a pretty slick system, but as you're about to find out, it doesn't always work quite so perfectly. So what happens when just adding an s makes a word sound, well, kind of awkward to say? Turns out the English language came up with a clever fix for this. We just pop in a vowel to make everything sound a little smoother. The secret here is to just listen to how the word ends. If it has a hissing or buzzing sound at the end, like in bus, fox, or church, just tacking on another s is going to sound clumsy, so we add es instead. This creates a whole new syllable and makes the plural way easier to say out loud. Seriously, try to say bus ses or church ses. It doesn't really work, does it? But buses and churches, they roll right off the tongue. That extra E is like a little phonetic bridge, and it's all about making the language flow.
All right, so now we come to another classic speed bump in English spelling. Words that end with the letter Y. As you might have guessed, this letter plays by its own special set of rules when it's time to become plural. The rule here is all about the letter that comes right before the Y. If it's a consonant, any letter that isn't A, E, I, O, or U, then we have to drop that Y completely and replace it with IES. You can see it perfectly right here with baby turning into babies. That B right before the Y is a consonant, so we make the switch. And you see the exact same pattern with body becoming bodies and family becoming families.
Okay, so up until now, all we've really been doing is adding letters. But now we're heading into some really cool territory. These are the true shapeshifters, nouns that totally change their form to become plural.
For words that end with that soft F sound, like half or life, the plural form often gets a harder V sound, and the spelling actually follows the sound. It changes from F or FE into VES. So one life becomes many lives. But, just when you think you finally got the pattern down, English loves to throw a curveball. It seems like for almost every single rule we've talked about, there's an exception just waiting to break it.
And here's the plot twist. Some words that look like they should follow a certain rule, well, they just don't. For words like these, the language just decided to stick with the easy default. Just add an S.
When you see the rule and the exception right next to each other, you can really see how tricky it can be. So life becomes lives, but roof just becomes roofs. And hero becomes heroes, but piano becomes pianos. There's no secret trick here. These are just the ones you have to learn over time. So now we get to the real rebels of the English language. These aren't just little exceptions. These are total rule breakers. Think of them as living fossils from a much, much older version of English, and they're still playing by an ancient set of rules.
I mean, how wild is this? For some words, the singular and the plural form are exactly the same. You can have one sheep, or you can have a field full of sheep. One deer, or a whole herd of deer. The word itself doesn't change a bit. Now, these might look totally random, but they're actually little echoes from other languages. See, words that we borrowed from Latin and Greek often brought their own plural rules with them. That's why one fungus becomes multiple fungi, and a crisis becomes crises. It's a tiny piece of history, just hiding in our spelling.
And finally, we get to the most dramatic plurals of them all. These are the words that go through a complete and total transformation. They don't just add a few letters or swap an ending, they become almost entirely new words. Think about it. One child becomes two children, one man, two men, one mouse, two mice. These are some of the oldest words we have in English, and their plurals are basically leftovers from a time when the rules of the language were completely different from what they are today.
Whew, okay, so after that wild ride from the super simple rules to the really strange exceptions, how in the world do you keep it all straight? Well, it actually helps to think of it as just a few simple strategies.
So here's the big takeaway. Your first move should always be to just add an S. If that doesn't sound quite right, check the ending to see if it needs an adjustment. Then ask yourself if it's one of those shapeshifters. And finally, for all those weird and wonderful rule breakers, well, you just have to get to know them one by one. In the end, learning plurals isn't really just about memorizing rules. It's kind of like uncovering the long and honestly fascinating history of the English language. Every single irregular noun tells its own little story, and it really makes you wonder, what other stories are hiding in the words we use every single day?